I'm an addict recovering from the disease of addiction. My name is Russell. And I want to thank God for everything. I'm clean through God's grace and mercy, sponsorship, 12 steps, 12 traditions, and 12 concepts of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm grateful to be clean, and I'm honored to be here. I want to thank God for giving a nice short podium because I'm 3.5 foot tall. I spoke at the Brooklyn convention. They had this podium that was, I don't know, it was probably 4 foot, so it was real tall for me. Anybody between like the fourth row up, all they could probably see was my head. And so I'm grateful for the little podium. Listen, we got to find gratitude in the little things, even if it's a podium. I want to thank the committee who tirelessly put effort in for the last year. Right? I don't know if you know anything about convention committees. If you're new, you probably don't, but they spend an entire year, every month, sometime, and when it gets close, they're every week meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Right? I've been a part of a convention committee. I was the programming chair for the New Jersey region like 10 years ago. I remember the sacrifice that it took. So I want to thank the committee. If you guys could just please give them a round of applause real quick. It's not all glitz and glamour. There's a lot of backbiting that goes on, and right. It seems like service is the one area where principals don't really get practiced too often. They elect you, they nominate you, they vote you in as a particular spot, and then they do everything for the. There's usually one or two in there that every single meeting they come at you. Right, so I want to thank you for your perseverance and continuing to do all the work to get this to happen. Right, because of the work that you guys did for the last year, lives are going to be saved. That's right. Because that's what we do here in Narcotics Anonymous. The literature, right? I'm a literature guy, and we have an IP called the group pamphlet. Under the speaker portion, it says that each speaker should give the newcomer something to identify with. I'm not going to give you a big giant war story. If you could light it on fire, I tried smoking it. There's your war story, right? I made my first meeting May 1st, 1993. I went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting to see my brother celebrate. That was 2 years into the drug portion of active addiction. I'm one of those guys, like the basic text says, I believe I had the disease of addiction long before I ever put a drug in my system. At like 6 years old, I remember I would go up, I'd steal money, I'd steal $2 out of my mother's purse, grab my best friend, we'd go down to the arcade, I'd get 25 penny fish. I'm old enough that shit was a penny. Right. We'd get 25 penny fish. We'd sit and eat the penny fish while playing a video game. And I remember how it felt, right, when the candy was gone and the money was gone and my friend was gone. That loneliness, that emptiness. It started real young, right? And I started using. I moved from Jersey City to Old Bridge. And I went to high school, and I didn't know nobody, right? I moved my freshman year. I knew nobody, so I played sports. I was an athlete. Imagine that. I was the captain of my basketball team at 4 foot tall, 85 pounds. We sucked. We were terrible. But my friends, right? I hung out with the jocks, and my friends, they invited me and said, hey, we're hanging out tonight. Friday nights we go out. And then we go to the football game. That's what we do. So we went out into the woods. I had 3 tiny little Budweiser nips. When you're 85 pounds, 3 Budweiser nips, a lot of beer. I remember nothing about the night. I woke up the next morning, splitting headache, eyes bloodshot, puke all down the front of me, and the bottom of my jeans were burnt. And I was like, yo, I'm never doing that again. That was the worst night of my entire life. I stayed stuck in that sickness for 2 days. Went back to school on Monday, and all my friends were like, yo, man, you were the funniest dude. We had so much fun. You were hitting on girls. You were slapping booties. You were jumping in the fire. You were the life of the party. And that's when it started. 3 weeks later, I had my first job. I got this job so that I could fund everybody drinking every weekend. I worked at this gas station and I robbed this man blind. And I had no idea where this was going to take me. Right? And I continued, I did what we do. I graduated. I did that, and then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this, and I was 24 years old. I'm running up and back and forth to Jersey City, selling Christmas trees in, where the hell were we? Fort Lee. And I remember for 3 years what I did was we'd go up there, we'd do some blow, I would get geeked out, and I'd make Christmas wreaths out of the friggin' branches, because that's what tweakers do. Right? I took my defect, turned it into an asset. And I did that for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden I turned 26, and I found myself, like, I would do it for just November and December, and then it would just stop, right? Right? I was one of those people who thought that because I could stop, that I didn't have the disease of addiction. The literature talks about how we looked at the stopping and not the using. The fact that I would use for 51 weeks in a row meant nothing. It was that 1 week that I would take off that absolved me of the disease of addiction. And then all of a sudden, I'm 26 years old and I'm finding myself over in Harlem in April. And I said, I think I might have a problem. So I did what we do, right? I got on a plane and went to Arizona because I looked at the brochure and they had a girl on a jet ski, I was like, this is the place for me. I had no idea that on the back of the thing, it was in fine print, a meth pipe. See, I thought that my problem was cocaine and Harlem. It turns out that my problem when I got to Arizona was methamphetamines and law enforcement. And I just kept using and I kept using. And I'm so grateful for Narcotics Anonymous. Because when I realized I had a problem, I knew where to go. Right? I used out there for a decade. The whole time I was using out there, my brother was carrying the message all across the country, sharing about me. Jerk. He was saying, yo, man, if I remember, because I've heard a lot of his CDs, because I used to share his experience, strength, and hope, because I didn't believe I had any. So he would share, like, listen, if you're prayerful, if you could pray for my brother, he's in Arizona right now destroying my parents' lives. So people all around the country were praying for me. Listen, I am a product of prayer. I'm here because somebody prayed, because a lot of somebody's prayed. You're here because somebody prayed. Maybe it was your prayer. Maybe you were the one who said, man, God, I don't know who you are. I don't even like you, but please get me out of this. I want to die. Maybe it was your mother. Maybe it was your father saying, I want my baby back, God. Please help him. Help her. Could have been your kid. Might have been your kid's prayer saying, I need my mommy back. And so I'm out in Arizona destroying my parents' life, and my best friend goes to treatment. And it happens to be the same week my father finally caught me. Right? He found the drugs. And I lived in Arizona. My friend went to this wonderful spa with acupuncture and massage therapy. He went to like Passages in Malibu. My dad said, you ain't worth $30,000. He's like, you're going where your brother can send you. My brothers happened to sponsor a guy who sponsored a guy who ran a spot in Compton. So I went to Compton. It was interesting. It was interesting. Right? But I had listened to enough of my brother's CDs to learn a little bit about the language. And the problem is, when you've got a little bit of knowledge and no application of what goes on here in Narcotics Anonymous, you become very dangerous to yourself and to others. See, because I would use what he taught, what I heard him say, to hold people off. And I remember I was in treatment for about 2 months. I was doing good, right? And then I had one of my little spurts. We weren't allowed to have coffee and candy in our rooms. So, of course, I had coffee and candy in my room. Got busted. One of the counselors grabs me and pulls me in. Now, he doesn't know who I am. Pulls me into his office. He goes, "Listen, man, I don't know what's going on, but you're starting to slide on me. So I need to reel you back in. I need you to listen to something." And I sit down at this chair and at his desk, and he puts this CD in. And all I hear is, "I'm Jimmy. I'm a recovering addict." And he leaves the room. Now this man, he doesn't even realize that he just put my brother's CD in the friggin' CD player. He comes back in, I'm flipping out. "What the hell's your problem? Why would you put him?" And then he finds out that my brother's Jimmy T, and oh my God. So check it out. I stay there for the 90 days. I leave treatment. I do what you guys told me. Thank God for H&I. H&I came in, and they told us to go. Don't go to Boo's house. Don't go pet the dog. Go straight to a meeting. So I did what y'all told me. I went straight to a meeting. I went to a meeting. I sat down. I said, "I'm brand new. I need a sponsor. Can y'all help me out?" And I picked this guy because he was a Dallas Cowboys fan, and he smoked meth. And half the room leaves it, and half the room leaves. What do you want me to tell you? Being a Cowboys fan hurt me for a long time. Right? But I didn't follow any of the suggestions other than get a sponsor, and I only got them because my brother told me to get a sponsor. Right? I didn't know how important sponsorship was. Right? And I did what you guys told me. The literature says those who make meetings regularly stay clean. Meeting makers make it. Now, I've come to believe now that meeting makers make meetings. Step workers make it. That's just my experience. And so I spend 9 months going to meetings the whole time. After the meeting, I'm going to my drug dealer's house to read the basic text to him. He doesn't give a shit why we were here. What the NA program is, who's an addict. He don't care about none of that stuff, right? But I thought I could save him. And then one day he left me in the room and I used. Right? And my one day out turned into the 2 longest years of my entire life. That first meeting, I met a girl named Trinity. Right? And we could be judgmental. Right? And I was ultra judgmental. I was the Michael Jordan of judgmental. She had 3 months clean and she was 6 months pregnant. And I remember looking down on this girl and talking behind her back. And I'm telling you that little piece of a story because you're going to hear about it later on. So I go back out and I use and I come back with all the things that I said. I didn't do that, so I'm not one of you guys. I didn't do that, so I'm not one of you guys. I'm not as sick as you. I don't need the steps. You need the steps. And I remember on my last day, I got released from jail, and I went and saw my probation officer after using. Right? I spent 2 days using. I didn't know. After having written a 4th step, I come to find out that I was trying to kill myself. I was trying to smoke so much speed that my heart would explode. And my PO calls me up and she's like, "Yo, you were supposed to see me 2 days ago. Where you at?" She goes, "You got 2 hours to come see me." And I kept smoking and the drug stopped working. The one thing that I found comfort in, right? The one thing that would shut my brain off stopped working. And I went and saw her, and she's like, "All right, come on. I need you to pee in a cup." I don't know how I didn't burn a hole in the bottom of it. I sit down at the desk in front of her. She's like, how you doing? I said, I'm doing good. How are you? I'm geeked out of my mind. And she goes, okay. She goes, we know this one's hot. The next one, if it comes back hot, you're going to prison. And I don't consider myself very good looking, but I am prison cute. And the fear of being passed around like a cigarette was all I needed. I left her office. I got clean in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. I sat on this bench. It's a memorial to my sisters. Both of my sisters have passed. Their plaques are on the back. And I sat on this bench and I said this prayer to a God that I hated. I said, help me. It's the most powerful prayer I've ever said. And if you don't believe that's okay, keep coming. Work the 12 steps. That might change for you. Right? Because I didn't believe. I believed God hated me. And God said, go back to NA. Remember how you felt when you got your 9-month key tag? And I went back to the meeting that night. And I sat there and thank God they were one of the groups that didn't say, if you use today, please don't say nothing. Right? They didn't say that. They said, does anybody have a topic regarding recovery they'd like to discuss? And I put my hand up. I said, can we talk about relapse? And these people shared about relapse and recovery. And they talked about the literature. They talked about step work. They talked about the solution. They talked about building a relationship with God through sponsorship. And none of it clicked that night. But I remember when we went to pray out, I was trying to leave. And this girl, Trinity, who stayed clean, put her arm around me. Right? We prayed out and I went to leave and she turned around and she hugged me. And she hugged me different. It was weird. When normal people, when we hug, we always lean to the right? Our right cheeks touch. Her left cheek touched on mine. So it was like really weird. I was like, all right. I hugged her. And she said, Russell, I love you. You're important. She goes, if you just get a sponsor and work the 12 steps, you're going to help thousands of people. And I didn't believe her. But a spark happened. Something happened in that moment to where somebody cared enough about me that they would say something so kind to somebody who was so undeserving of kind words. She changed my life that night. I come to find out that she hugged me that way for a specific purpose. When you hug, your left cheeks touch. What happens is our hearts press. It's called a heart-to-heart hug. I had no idea. And that woman changed my life. She invited me to her house. She let me hang out with her kids. She let me play Guitar Hero. I played the drums. I was the freaking drummer. I drove her husband bananas because I would take her to work. I'd go back to her house and I'd bang on the drums. He worked the midnight shift. He was trying to sleep. And all he hears is me going, bah, 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 bah. But within 2 weeks, right, I called my brother. I said, what do I do? He said, get a sponsor. I said, okay. I went and got a sponsor. Thank God this is an all-inclusive program and not exclusive. Alcohol is a drug. This man, listen, his drug of choice was Bacardi. But he found a home in Narcotics Anonymous. He's everything that I didn't think my sponsor should look like. He was 285 years old. Bald and drank. I was like, this ain't even, like, what, I don't know. Like, a sponsor's supposed to have what you want. I don't want none of that. What he had was 12-step experience, 16 years clean, and a relationship with God and the literature. Right? And I've had 3 sponsors in my 16-plus years clean. My clean date's June 19th, 2008. Just over about 16 and a half years. I got this man. When he sponsored me, he had a purpose. I believe that everybody who God places in my life has a purpose. And this man's purpose was to teach me how to have a relationship. It's in our basic text that a sponsor might be the first honest relationship we have with anybody. And I was able to talk to him about stuff that I couldn't share in meetings. Right? I was afraid to say in an NA meeting, I I hate God, and God hates me. So this wonderful, God is good all the time, all the time. God is good. Every time y'all did that, it went through me. But I could share it with my sponsor. I was able to be honest with him. Right? And I remember every meeting was a Just for Today meeting where I got clean, and it happened to be the G word. That was the Just for Today. And as soon as they read it, I got up and I stormed outside. I slammed the book down. I'm going to go smoke a cigarette to teach them all a lesson. And I'm outside. My sponsor, man, see, sponsors, my sponsors, all three of them have been Jedi Knights. They're geniuses. They know exactly what to say, when to say it to me. The man walked outside and goes, "What's your problem?" I said, "There is no God." He goes, "Okay." He said, "All right." I'm like, "God hates me." He goes, "You have strong feelings about something that doesn't exist. How do you feel about the Easter Bunny and Spider-Man?" I didn't think that shit was funny. I was pissed. What he did was, he taught me that I do have a relationship with God. It's just a poor one based on what the disease has told me over the last 20 years of active addiction. Which started with my mother. The woman who brought me to a place of worship growing up. She said something that affected me profoundly when I was like 8 years old. I remember I was going in the kitchen. I didn't realize that sound traveled. I reached in the cookie bag. I grabbed the cookie. She heard the from the bag. I turned around and I ran out of the kitchen and I tripped. And my mother said something that affected me profoundly. She said, "God got you." From that point forward, I thought of God as vengeful. I didn't know that God was who you guys said he was. Right? And so I meet this guy, and he's teaching me about the literature. He has a book study. I got a step-working guy with a year's worth of dust on it. I'm one of those addicts who listen, I don't recommend you getting a year clean before you start working steps. The literature says that the sooner we work this program, just that much faster do we become productive members of society, something like that. I butchered it, but I remember what he did for me that day. Because I was like, well, if God's so loving, then why did he allow me to get molested by a family member? Why did I have to grow up in that household? Why did he take my older sister? Why did he take my younger sister? And listen, my sponsor's job is not to change what happened to you. Their job is to change your perspective. It's to change the way you see what happened to you. Right? And he goes, "Okay, so why were you molested?" He's like, "What does the fourth step say?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I got a year clean. I ain't done no step work." "What does the fourth step say, Spons?" He said, "The fourth step says that if the pain we go through helps just one person, it was worth it." He goes, "And you've already talked to me about it, and you're going to write about it, and you're going to share it in a meeting, and you're going to help a bunch of people, right? Because men don't share that kind of stuff." See, what happens when I wrote it down and then I shared it with my sponsor, it lost all of its power. I'm not saying I'm never going to use, but I'm never going to use over that. I go, "Okay, fair enough. The literature says that that's what it is, that's what it is. Well, what about my older sister dying?" He goes, "What did she die from?" "It was a bowel obstruction." "Why did she have a bowel obstruction?" "Because she was an active addict for 30 years. The disease of addiction took her." He goes, "What happens when addicts use, Russell?" I go, "They die." He goes, "That ain't God's fault." He goes, I'm like, "Okay." I said, "What about my little sister?" She was the good one. My older brother was a crackhead. My sister was a doctor shopper, pill popper. And I was just a garbage pail tweaker. I was like, "What do you got?" I liked it all. But my little sister, we adopted her. She was actually my cousin. And when she was born, she was addicted to heroin. She had to kick methadone, heroin, and coke as a newborn. And she had a learning disability. And she had gone to... She had just left for San Diego State College, signed up to go to San Diego State College, and on the way home, my mother was driving on Route 10 in California, veered to miss a coyote. The van flipped over and killed my sister. And so my sister, my mother has this guilt that she's been living with her whole since this has happened. I said, why would God do that? He goes, Russell, everybody has a purpose. What was your sister's purpose? What did your sister do? Now, if you heard my brother share, you heard about how vicious my father was. He was an angry, bitter drunk, Jersey City motorcycle cop. He spent his days chasing you guys around, but he was fat and out of shape, couldn't catch us. So he was pissed off, go to the bar, get drunk, leave the bar, go to the track, lose his money, come home, and beat the shit out of my older brother and sister. He never touched me because I was the golden child. And when we got Robin, he went from being a provider to being a father. Robin's purpose was to change his heart. She turned him into a father, a real man, someone who was willing to take care of other children. So she served her purpose, and God took her home. See, my sponsor taught me that God's not out to get me. Everything that happens, God is doing it for me. But it's all in my perspective. I have to be willing to see it that way. And early on, I couldn't see it that way. That's why we have sponsors. Right? And I had this man sponsor me for 2 years. I moved from Arizona, the hottest place on earth, to Schenectady, New York, the coldest place on earth, where they get a dusting, which is 2.5 feet of snow. I went there because I reconnected with a girl I went to high school with. It was great having a relationship 3,000 miles away. There's nothing to fight about. Then I got to the house. And after about 3 months, she said, I had a business meeting. She's not even in recovery. She said, I had a business meeting and your commitment is up, sir. Your services are no longer needed at this home group. And I call my brother and I say, hey, bro, can I stay with you for a couple of months? I lived there for 9 years. Never said what couple of months, man. I just leave that shit open-ended. And so I moved from Schenectady to New Jersey. And when I moved to Schenectady, I thought I was supposed to be with this girl so I could help her raise her kids and live this wonderful life and get the 1.5 more kids and a picket fence and a puppy. Now, God brought me to upstate New York so that I could meet Chris R., the man who sponsored me and walked me through all 12 steps. Help me not just know that I have a relationship with God, but develop one through the 12 steps. That was his purpose. That man taught me so many things. I remember I'm at his house. He and his wife are in an argument. I had never seen anything like this. They're in the middle of fighting with one another. And he goes, hold on, we're going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to leave this room. I'm going to pray over there. You're going to pray in here, and we'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll just finish discussing this. I sat there in utter amazement. What the hell just happened? That is not how a fight is supposed to go. I grabbed him. I said, you are doing it wrong, bro. I said, what's wrong with you? And he said, just watch. And I just sat there, and they came back together after praying and had a grown-up discussion. And the fight went away. And I was like, yo, I need you to teach me that. He goes, I just did. He goes, that was lesson A, B, and C, bro. That's what you get. That's it. Right? He walks me through all 12 steps. Right? And this miraculous thing happens. Right? Because I was told, right, we have it in our, a lot of, it's in the Living Clean now. It says that one of the most often given suggestions, but least heeded, is no relationships for the first year. Right? My sponsor told me, he goes, I'd suggest you get through your 4th to 5th step so you know who you are, so you know who you're bringing into a relationship, and you don't even know what you like yet, so why don't we do that and find out what you like. Right? So I did it. I did what he said. I wrote my little ass up. 4 and 5, 5th step. I've done it. Once we go over 5, I can knock it down again, right? And he's like, yeah. He goes, you might want to live it. I was like, yeah, write it, go over, live it later. We'll live it later. And so I write my 5th step. Listen, man, I love this man for what he did for me. Not just the sacrifices that he would make, right? Because he lived in upstate New York. I lived in Carteret, New Jersey. He drove 3.5 hours to go over we did 4 and 5 together to go over 2 steps with me. We did like a 6-hour session, went to a meeting, came home, got up the next morning. I took him out to breakfast. We went back and we spent 12 hours going over the rest of my 4th and 5th step. He gave up not just a weekend, but a weekend with his wife and son. And he poured into me, right? And we went over the 5th step. And he was not even to the car. And I was on my phone. Yo, can I come through? I'm done with 5. Let's do it. And so I go up there, and me and this young lady, whatever. And it lasts about 2 weeks, right? Right? It wasn't even a relationship. It was an antibiotic cycle. And she, so I call him up. I'm like, yo, bro, this is stupid. Like, yo, I don't get it. I don't understand. Blah, 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 blah. You said go through 4 and 5, and it's supposed to work now. Everything's supposed to be perfect. And he said, okay, Russell, what are you going to do different? That was his favorite question. Russell, what are you going to do different? And without my permission, I didn't even mean to say it because I would never think of it and say it. I said, the next girl I date, I'm not messing around with it for 6 months. And as soon as I said it, I wanted to take it back. Like, I was like, bro, that's a blue key tag. Whoa. Right? And so I start dating, a couple, listen, I do what I'm supposed to do, which is focus on my recovery, and I stay away from women for a little while. I'm like, y'all are crazy. You guys are the crazy ones. Hadn't written a 6-step yet. Didn't know it was me. Every girl I dated was nuts. Yeah, the common denominator, every relationship you had was you, Russell. And I get through a couple more steps. I meet this girl, and we're talking. And we're talking for like a month. Right? I take her out. We go golfing. We do this. We do all kinds of fun stuff, right? And she grabs me the one day and she goes, okay, listen. Either you find me repulsive, or you are not interested in me in any way, shape, or form. And I remember the promise that I made to God, to myself, and to my sponsor, which was 6 months. I said, listen, you probably never heard this before, but you're worth more than what's between your legs. And I made a promise to God to not sleep with you until we're together for 6 months. And she said, bet. And waited it out. We mess around. 6 months and 1 day. 6 months and 1 day. I'm the closing speaker at Spirit of Love Convention up in just outside of Canada. So far up New York, it's not even funny. And I bring her with me, and we mess around. And we messed around just a couple of times, and she got pregnant. And I'm like, yo. This 12 steps thing's freaking working. 12 steps, 6 months. I'm doing different stuff. Everything is perfect, right? I'm like excited, but I'm terrified. I'm like, I've never been a dad. I don't know what it's like to change a diaper. I don't know what to do, but I'm excited because I've always wanted to be a father. I think I'd be a good father. Like we're starting off the same fucking size. We could share shoes for a couple of years. And I always wanted a little joker, just like me with Jordans. Come on. And check it. She calls me the one day I'm at work. She's like, yo, when you're done, come home. I want to go out to eat. And we go out to eat, and she sits me down, and she goes, how do you feel about what's going on? I was like, I'm excited and I'm scared. But I'm more excited than I am scared. And she goes, okay. And she slides me like an IP. And she wants to get an abortion. And I'm like, ugh. So I got two choices, right? I can do what I've always done, which is manipulate, lie, pressure, and try to force this woman into having a baby that she doesn't want. Or I could do something that I've never done before and be a real man and support her in her decision, because it's her decision. It's her decision. She's the one birthing it, so I didn't have much of an option involved. But I did something I had never done before, and I supported her, and I was helpful, and I was there for the thing. And I went to the store, and I made her soup, and I took care of her, and it didn't work out. And we're like really close friends now. The 12 steps can change your heart without your permission. So after her, that's it. No more of this. Women are bad. Women are bad. Steps are good. Women are bad. Steps are good. So I say, all right, now that's it. Now I'm not doing no more women until I worked all 12 steps. My sponsor goes, why? I said, because I want to be the best version of me for somebody. And so I followed through. 4 years I'm writing. Now my sponsor and I, it was difficult to do step work because he lived 4 hours away, and he was a heavy highway construction guy. He worked 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. He had 1 day off. He needed to spend it with his wife and kid, so it was difficult for us to go over step work, but I pressed through because I wanted to go through all 12 with him. And I go through all 12 steps. We pray beforehand. He prays, right? And we get done with this step work. He goes, so how do you feel? I go, I've never accomplished anything. I've never finished anything in my life. I said, I'm a starter. I'm great out of the gate. Like, I'm a quarter horse. I run real short, real fast. And after about 20 steps, I need a cigarette. I go, so this is the first thing I've ever finished, man. I'm proud of myself. He goes, okay, so let's pray. And so the first thing out of my mind. Thank you, God, for this step work. I've been obedient with the women. And he giggled. And, I said, God, give me a woman who loves you so much that I got to chase you to catch her. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And God answered. Gave me a beautiful woman who loved God, who wanted to chase God. And I thought, I did it. I found her. And I moved back up to cold-ass Albany, New York. And we lived together. We got married, and COVID happened. The relationship started to deteriorate. See, what happens is, I work in treatment, right? I believe that, like when we work through the 12 steps, that God puts a purpose on our heart. The purpose for me is helping addicts. I love working in treatment. I love the detox. I like the sickest of the sick. Give me the worst you got. Those are my people, right? Because I believe in helping the underdog. I want to help the person who doesn't think they can stay clean. Those are the ones I love to help. And because of COVID happened, the place shrunk down and I got laid off. Meetings closed. Zoom hadn't happened yet. And all of a sudden, God took my purpose from me. I wasn't sharing in meetings. I wasn't sharing at work. And I fell into a depression, and I've never been in depression before. So I didn't even know what was going on. And the marriage, we separated. And I can remember going to meetings and being afraid to share because everything I said was home before I got home. Share about it. And the people that I went up there and told me that they love me, we love you, we need you, you're an asset to the NA community, and if you ever need us, we're going to be there for you. And when I needed them the most, they all turned their back on me. And check it out. That's okay. That's okay. Today it's okay. Then I was F them. I wanted to kill people. Today I realize that what God was trying to do is he was trying to get rid of all of the distractions. He said, you've walked away from me, Russell, and I need your undivided attention. So I'm going to take everyone from you. He left very few people. The problem that I had is that I kept focusing on the ones that left instead of loving on the one who stayed. Right? And I would pray. And I'm one of those guys that I love to pray for people. People ask me all the time, will you pray for us? Yeah, of course I will. I love doing that stuff. They think I got like some kind of like hotline to God. That's not how, no, it doesn't work like that. He hears you, he hears you, he hears you, he hears everybody. Right? And so I remember when I was going through this divorce, I would pray, and usually I could hear God. I could feel something. I could feel it in my heart. In my spirit, I could feel, and all of a sudden, I couldn't hear God's voice. And I'm like, why now? Dude, why would you leave me now when I need you the most? And God never left me. The problem is that when we've already decided what God's going to say, we can't hear him. I kept saying, fix the marriage. He kept saying, no. I didn't want to hear that. So I couldn't hear him. I wasn't supposed to fix the marriage. That was supposed to happen the way it happened. Right? And I'll tell you why. I left New York. We got divorced. I left New York. I came back to New Jersey. I had to move on from my sponsor. And I picked the man who sponsors me today. His name is Najee. He lives in Philly. He's an incredible man. When he got me 4 years ago, I was filled with anger, bitterness, resentment. I was so mad at the people up there in upstate New York and at God that I had a trouble identifying with the people who I was with in New Jersey. And he has taught me about forgiveness. He's taught me about how to be okay with forgiving somebody in the moment. I'm going to go back to Trinity, the girl who hugged me weird. She was my best friend, and she made the decision that she could go out and smoke weed and drink. She wanted to hang. That's what her husband did. She wanted to be with her husband. That's what she wanted to do. And I remember I was so angry with her that I called her up and I cursed her out. How could you leave me with these crazy people? You're the only one who knows about me. You're the only one who loves me. Blah, 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 blah. I cursed her out. And when I got through with my ninth step, my sponsor, I told you, he's a Jedi. He said, the first one is going to be Trinity. That's who we're calling. My sponsor knew that if the first amends didn't go well, there wouldn't be a second one. And he knew enough about Trinity from what I had told him. So I called her up, right? She lives in Oregon or something. I called her up like, hey, I'm so sorry for the way I spoke to you, the way I treated you. After how you loved me, invited me in with your family, you made me a part of your home. You invited me to your wedding. You let me help you raise your kids. And I turned my back on you when I shouldn't have. And she said something. See, I want you to know how powerful the program in Narcotics Anonymous works. It works in using addicts' lives. This woman said to me, Russell, I forgave you while you were doing it. That's a powerful, powerful 12th step. And so I come back to New Jersey after the divorce. I get this guy to sponsor me, and we're working the steps again, right? The 12 steps don't end. As a matter of fact, the literature in the step working guide, it says the steps don't end here. The steps are a new beginning. We start them all over again. I start working the 12 steps with this new guy. And I get this job where I get to do whatever I want. I work for like 10 minutes and then I sit around for 45 doing nothing. And so I get to watch TikTok all day. They pay me to watch TikTok. So I'm watching TikTok, right? And I'm listening to this guy. They're having an interview. And in the interview, the guy goes, so how old are your parents? And he goes, 75. I said, oh, my parents are 75. I'm identifying with the guy on TikTok. And I'm like, all right, I'm like, cool. And he was like, okay, so how often do you see them? He goes, well, I see them 3 times a year. He goes, so how much time do you have with them? He goes, if they make it 10 years, I got 10 years. He goes, no, you got 30 visits. And I started doing the math in my head. I smoked meth. I didn't do math. So when I started thinking of it, I'm like, wait a minute. I see my parents every other year, maybe every third year. I said, that means I got like 7 visits left with my parents if they make it 10 years. And I started crying at work. I was bawling. I was devastated. I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? And I went outside and I said, God, I don't know what you're going to do. It's none of my business. But you better figure something out because I need more than 7 visits with my parents. I said, I don't know if that means the lottery, casino. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I need more than 7 visits. And God heard me. And 6 months later, my parents called me up and said, yo, we put the house on the market today. I said, okay. They called me 3 hours later. Yo, this house is sold. I said, what? Yeah, we got full price cash. I said, in this market? They said, yeah. And we're buying a house in Toms River. We need help. We want you to move in with us. God heard my prayer. And the marriage couldn't work because if I was still with her, I wouldn't be with my parents right now. My parents needed my help. And I get this opportunity to live a 9-step with my parents. They only got to see me for a week every couple of years, so they can't really gauge what Narcotics Anonymous has really done in my life. They can't really see the change that's taken place in my heart and the man that I've become through the 12 steps, sponsorship, and a relationship with God. Through the help of you guys, what you guys have taught me about how recovery works so that I can try to apply it in my life. And now that I'm living with them, they are so grateful for what you guys have done. They don't even recognize me. My father is utterly, he said to me, yo, when did you start paying bills, bro? He's like, because when you left Arizona, you were $25,000 in the hole. You had no credit whatsoever. He goes, we're 15 years later. Not only do you have actually money in an account, you're paying all the bills, and you've got a credit score. The car is in your name with your insurance. Real tags. Those are real. I got them from the DMV, not that dude Tony I know. He's like, you're not the same person that you were 15 years ago. I said, no, Dad, I'm not. I'm not the same person I was last year. What happens when we work the 12 steps, it's miraculous. I just need anybody who's new to understand how important you are. In the 12th step, it says that each of us has a one-of-a-kind message that is sure to attract many. That means you, newcomer, you have a message that's going to be, that's only for one person to hear. Right? Because some people aren't going to like me. I talk a lot about God. He talks so much about God. He yells a lot. And he said, fuck 12 times. You have a one-of-a-kind message. There's somebody who's either in Narcotics Anonymous or they're on their way. We're about to pray them into Narcotics Anonymous. And they need to hear your message. So I'm begging you, please, get a sponsor. Addicts love free shit. Sponsor is free. They ain't got to pay them nothing. As a matter of fact, the only payment you're going to be making is an investment into yourself. This guy who sponsors me now, he's changing my heart. That woman who changed her mind, we got divorced. I truly hope she has an incredible life. I hope she has 50 kids with some man who she loves. I hope they have an incredible life together. 4 years ago, I wanted her hit by a bus. That's not who I am today. The 12 steps has shifted my perspective. Right? And that's what sponsors do. They change our perspective. They can't change what happened to us. I'm about done. I'm pretty tired. I'm grateful for the committee. I want to thank Vince for believing in me. Right? Our Just for Today says, find somebody in Narcotics Anonymous who believes in you and wants to help you in your recovery. Find your person. There's somebody who wants to help you. You just need to be open to let them help you. You see, a lot of people have sponsors, but not a lot of people are sponsored. Today I'm being sponsored. I've been given this gift of life, a life that I don't deserve, I didn't even want. I'm grateful to be here. I want to thank God for allowing me to share, and thank you guys for listening.
Can we thank Russell one more time?